Hi, I'm Claire Mitchell, and this is the story of how being just a receptionist turned me into the person who reshaped the entire tech industry. But more importantly, it's about how the most significant innovations often come from the people everyone overlooks. For 3 years, I worked as a receptionist at Nexus Technologies, my father's software company. Not exactly the position you'd expect from the daughter of the CEO, especially someone with a computer science degree from MIT. But Dad had his reasons. "You need to understand humility," he said when I first asked for a development position. "Starting at the bottom builds character." What he really meant was that he didn't trust my abilities. After all, I was the creative one who spent my college summers coding indie games instead of chasing high-status internships like my brother Daniel. Every morning, I greeted executives in designer suits, scheduled meetings I wasn't allowed to attend, and watched as my ideas were dismissed without a second glance. "Just forward the calls, Claire," they'd say, barely glancing at me as they rushed to their important meetings. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that being a receptionist gave me a unique perspective. I saw everything. Every visitor, every conversation, every problem that needed solving. More importantly, I had access to every complaint, every customer service call, and every piece of feedback that came through our front desk. During quiet afternoons between answering phones and scheduling meetings, I worked on my little hobby project, as Daniel liked to call it. It started as a simple tool to manage the constant flow of visitor traffic and meeting schedules, but it grew into something more. I noticed patterns in our customer complaints, gaps in our service delivery, and inefficiencies in our workflows that nobody else seemed to see. So I built solutions. Small ones at first: automated scheduling, visitor tracking, predictive analytics for customer service loads. By my second year, I had developed a comprehensive AI-driven system that could revolutionize how companies handle customer interactions. Dad never noticed. He was too busy grooming Daniel, fresh from his Harvard MBA, to take over the company. Daniel, who couldn't write a line of code to save his life, but could talk for hours about market penetration and synergistic opportunities. Then came the day everything changed. I overheard Dad and Daniel in the conference room discussing the company's image problem. "Having your daughter as a receptionist sends the wrong message," Daniel argued. "We need to project professionalism, especially with the Apple deal coming up." Dad sighed. "You're right. It's time Claire found a real career path. She's had her fun playing at being an employee." The next morning, Dad called me into his office. "Claire, we need to talk about your future," he said, explaining how it was time for me to move on. How the company needed to maintain professional standards. How he was doing this for my own good. He even offered a generous severance package, his way of softening the blow of firing his own daughter. What he didn't know was that I'd spent the previous night finalizing the patent applications for my little hobby project. As I walked out of his office carrying a small box of my belongings, I couldn't help but smile. In exactly 1 month, the meeting with Apple, the one they were so worried about, would go very differently than they expected. The next month was a blur of activity. While Dad and Daniel prepared for their big Apple meeting, convinced they were about to secure a life-changing partnership, I was busy putting the final touches on my project. My tiny apartment became command central. 3 monitors displayed different aspects of my AI system, which I'd named Iris, Intelligent Response Integration System. The irony of naming my creation after the Greek goddess of communication wasn't lost on me. Then came the email that changed everything. "Dear Ms. Mitchell, I've reviewed your proposal and prototype for Iris. Your integration of AI with customer service operations is exactly what we've been looking for. Would you be available to meet next Thursday at 2 p.m.? Best regards, Sarah Carter, VP of Innovation, Apple." I smiled, remembering how I'd submitted my project to Apple's innovation portal the day after Dad fired me. What Dad and Daniel didn't know was that while they were pursuing Apple for a basic software integration deal, I had been quietly developing exactly what Apple had been searching for: a revolutionary AI system for customer service automation. The meeting with Sarah went better than I could have imagined. By the end, she wasn't just interested, she was enthusiastic. "This is incredible, Claire," she said, examining Iris's capabilities. "You've solved problems we've been struggling with for years. How long did it take your team to develop this?" "No team," I replied. "Just me, working between answering phones and scheduling meetings. Sarah's eyes widened. You developed this while working as a receptionist? Sometimes the best solutions come from people who actually deal with the problems, I said simply. 2 weeks later, I received another email from Sarah. This one made my heart race. Claire, our CEO, would like to see Iris in action. We're planning to visit Nexus Technologies next Thursday for the partnership proposal. Would you be willing to do a demonstration that same day? The timing seems appropriate. Best regards. Sarah Carter, VP of Innovation, Apple. I grinned as I typed my response. Dad and Daniel had no idea that Apple's interest in Nexus Technologies was about to take a very unexpected turn. The day of the meeting arrived. I dressed carefully in a sharp charcoal suit, no more business casual receptionist attire. As I walked into the Nexus Technologies lobby, Emily, my replacement, didn't recognize me at first. I'm here for the Apple meeting, I said, enjoying her double take. Oh, Ms. Mitchell, I'm so sorry, I didn't. It's fine, I assured her, hearing familiar voices approaching from the conference room. Dad and Daniel rounded the corner, deep in conversation with Apple's CEO and Sarah. Dad stopped mid-sentence when he saw me, his face shifting from confusion to alarm. Claire? What are you doing here? Before I could answer, the Apple CEO stepped forward, hand extended. Ah, Ms. Mitchell. The woman of the hour. We're very excited about your presentation. The color drained from Dad's face as he looked between us. Presentation? Dad asked, incredulous. Sarah smiled. Didn't you know? The real reason for our visit today isn't your integration proposal. We're here to see Iris, said the Apple CEO as he glanced at my father. Your daughter's system, the one you hadn't mentioned it, given that it was developed right here in your company. That's when I opened my laptop, ready to show them exactly what just a receptionist could do. The conference room fell silent as I connected my laptop to the display screen. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his expensive chair while Dad sat frozen, his face a mask of confusion and growing concern. Iris, I began, addressing the room, is an AI-driven system that revolutionizes how companies handle customer interactions. But rather than tell you about it, let me show you. I pulled up the live demo displaying Iris's sleek interface. For the past 3 years, while working as a receptionist, I observed how our company handled customer service, visitor management, and internal communications. I noticed patterns, inefficiencies, and opportunities that you can only see from the front lines. The Apple CEO leaned forward, clearly intrigued. Go on. I demonstrated how Iris could predict customer needs based on historical data, automatically route inquiries to the right departments, and even anticipate potential issues before they became problems. Here's what Iris did with just 3 months of Nexus Technologies customer service data, I said, pulling up a graph. It identified patterns that helped reduce response times by 70% and increased customer satisfaction ratings by 85%. Impossible, Daniel interrupted. Our customer service metrics are proprietary. You wouldn't have access to that data as a receptionist. I smiled. Actually, every customer call, complaint, and compliment came through the front desk. I didn't just have access to the data, I was the one collecting it. Sarah from Apple pulled out a tablet, showing her CEO something. These numbers align with our test results. We ran Iris through our simulation environments last week, and the performance was unprecedented. Dad finally found his voice. You developed this while answering phones during lunch breaks? I replied, between meetings, while waiting for couriers, all those moments you thought I was just playing around on my computer. I paused, letting it sink in. It's amazing what you can accomplish when no one's paying attention to you. The Apple CEO stood up. Ms. Mitchell, we've seen enough. We'd like to make you an offer. He slid a folder across the table, and my breath caught. Inside was a contract. Apple wanted to acquire Iris for $120 million, with a separate contract hiring me as head of AI innovation. The room erupted in chaos. Daniel was sputtering about loyalty and family obligations. Dad sat in stunned silence, staring at the contracts. But what happened next would prove that sometimes the biggest victories come with the hardest choices. I closed my laptop and faced my father directly. Before anyone signs anything, I have a counter-proposal, I said. Dad looked up, his face showing a mix of pride, regret, and fear, emotions I'd never seen him display before. 3 years ago, you put me at the front desk to teach me humility, I said, pulling out another set of documents from my briefcase. But what you actually taught me was invaluable. I learned how this company really works from the ground up. I placed the documents on the table. So here's my offer. Instead of selling Iris to Apple, we partner with them. Iris becomes a joint venture between Nexus Technologies and Apple, with me leading the development team. The Apple CEO raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Go on. Nexus Technologies has the industry connections and infrastructure. Apple has the global reach and resources. Together, we could make Iris the new standard in business AI, I said confidently. Sarah quickly ran some calculations on her tablet. The potential revenue from a partnership model could far exceed the buyout offer within 5 years. Dad picked up the partnership proposal, his hand slightly shaking. You have this prepared all along. I learned from you, Dad, I said softly. Always have a backup plan. The next 2 hours were intense negotiations. By the end, we had a deal. Iris would become a joint venture, with Nexus Technologies owning 40%, Apple owning 40%, and me retaining 20%, plus the role of Chief Innovation Officer. As the Apple team left, promising to have their legal department finalize the details, Dad asked me to stay behind. Daniel had stormed out earlier, presumably to process the fact that his receptionist sister had just orchestrated the biggest deal in the company's history. Claire, Dad said, looking older and wiser than I'd ever seen him, I owe you an apology. I interrupted him. Actually, you owe an apology to every receptionist, junior employee, and overlooked worker in this company because I guarantee you, they all have valuable insights we've been ignoring. Over the next year, Nexus Technologies transformed. We implemented a company-wide innovation program, encouraging ideas from employees at all levels. Iris evolved beyond our wildest expectations, becoming the industry standard for AI-driven business solutions. Daniel eventually came around, admitting that his Harvard MBA hadn't prepared him for the real innovation happening on the front lines. He now leads our corporate strategy, but he starts each new manager with a month at the front desk, a program we call the Claire Protocol. Last week, I gave the commencement speech at MIT. My topic? Innovation from the ground up, why every position matters. As I looked out at the graduating class, I shared the lesson I'd learned from my time as just a receptionist. That true innovation doesn't care about your title, your office, or your position on the org chart. It cares about your ability to see problems and imagine solutions. Dad attended the speech, sitting proudly in the front row. These days, he spends more time listening to his employees and less time making assumptions about their potential. The company's performance reflects this change. Our stock price has tripled, and our employee satisfaction ratings are at an all-time high. As for me, I still keep a photo of my old reception desk in my corner office. It reminds me that sometimes the best view of a company isn't from the top down, but from the ground up, and that the next revolutionary idea might come from the person answering your phones, if only you're willing to listen. After all, I'm living proof that you should never underestimate just a receptionist.